You're standing in a Ford dealership parking lot on a Saturday afternoon, and the salesman has just handed you a brochure for the F-150 XLT. It's sitting there looking impossibly clean, a little aggressive, the kind of truck that makes you feel like a different person just by standing next to it. And then you flip to the back page, $53,000. You do the math in your head. Taxes, dealer fees, the mandatory destination charge they snuck onto the sticker, another $2,600, by the way, up 25% from 2 years ago. And suddenly you're looking at something closer to $60,000 for a vehicle. A vehicle, not a house, not a down payment, a truck. And here's the wild part. You've got a good job, you're not struggling in any obvious way, you make decent money. But that number still makes your stomach drop. And you're not alone in that feeling. My name is Olivia, and I spend a strange amount of time thinking about money, the psychology of spending, and the gap between what Americans believe they can afford and what the math actually says. I've watched people sign themselves into car payments that quietly rearrange their entire financial life, and I've watched them not realize it until years later. The truck thing, honestly, is one of the clearest examples I've ever seen of that gap in action. So today we're going to talk about what it actually takes to afford a $50,000 truck in 2026. Not just qualify for the loan, but genuinely, comfortably afford one. And I think by the end of this, you might see the truck market a little differently than you did when you started. The number everyone's pretending is normal. Let's start with some context, because context matters a lot here. The average transaction price for a new full-size pickup truck in 2026 is sitting at just over $65,000. Not the fancy trim, the average. Kelley Blue Book reported the average was $65,964 in March of this year alone. So when we talk about a $50,000 truck, we're actually talking about the entry-level, base-configured, nothing-added-on version of a vehicle category where most people are spending significantly more. That's important to hold on to. The $50K truck is the floor, not the ceiling. And the overall car market, the average new vehicle transaction price crossed $49,275 this spring, up 3.5% in a single year. You can still find affordable cars, but you have to go looking for them now. They don't naturally float to the top of the market anymore. The market has drifted upward, and trucks are what's pulling it there. Here's what gets me, though. This has happened in slow motion, and somewhere along the way, we all just accepted it. A truck that cost $30,000 15 years ago is now approaching $60,000. And not because trucks are dramatically better, partly because manufacturers learned that if they kept adding heated seats and 12-inch touchscreens and lane departure warnings, they could justify the price creep. And partly because we kept buying them anyway. The monthly payment trap. Now, when you walk into that dealership and tell them you're not sure you can afford $53,000, you know what they're going to say. They're going to say, let's talk monthly payments. And this is where things get genuinely dangerous. The average monthly payment on a new vehicle right now is $767. That's across all vehicles. For trucks specifically, you're looking at something higher, often $900 to $1,100 a month, depending on your credit score, your down payment, and how long you're willing to stretch the loan. And the stretch is getting longer. 7-year, 84-month auto loans are now completely normal. The dealership will offer you one without blinking. Here's the financial consequence of that stretch, and I want you to really sit with this. On a $53,000 truck at a 7% interest rate over 84 months, you're making payments of about $800 a month. That sounds manageable. But over the life of that loan, you've spent nearly $67,000 on a truck that, by the time you've paid it off, is 7 years old and worth somewhere around $25,000. You've paid $42,000 in interest and depreciation on a vehicle. Nobody puts it that way at the dealership. The Century Foundation released an analysis this spring showing that total American auto debt reached $1.68 trillion, a 37% increase since 2018. And here's the number that quietly tells the whole story. The share of new vehicle buyers agreeing to monthly payments of $1,000 or more hit 20% in early 2026. 1 in 5 people buying a new car is paying over $1,000 a month for it. You didn't notice that creeping up, but it did. So what income do you actually need? This is where people get fuzzy, and I think the fuzziness is sometimes intentional. It keeps you in the chair at the dealership. There's a general financial guideline that says your total vehicle costs shouldn't exceed 15% of your gross monthly income. Some advisors will push it to 20%, but that's already starting to make your life tight if you have any other debt. Let's use the more conservative number. If your monthly truck payment is $850 and you add insurance, which for a full-size truck is running $150 to $250 a month depending on your state and driving history, plus fuel, plus maintenance, you're probably spending $1,200 to $1,400 a month total on this truck. For that number to represent 15% of your gross income, you'd need to be earning around $8,000 to $9,300 a month. That's a gross annual salary of roughly $96,000 to $112,000 a year. The median household income in the United States right now is just under $78,000. So by that math, a household at the American median income, not broke, not struggling, genuinely middle class, probably cannot comfortably afford a $50,000 truck. They might qualify for the loan. The bank will likely approve them, but comfortable is different from approved. And here's the K-shaped thing that nobody's really talking about in the truck market. Incomes have grown, but not evenly. A Brookings analysis from earlier this year found that for higher income households, wages rose 6% this April compared to a year earlier. For lower earners, that number was 1.5%. The truck market is reflecting this split perfectly. The people buying $65,000 trucks are not average income earners. They're the upper portion of that K. The blue-collar disconnect. This is the part that I find genuinely fascinating and also a little heartbreaking. Trucks have always been marketed to working people. The Ford F-150 has been the best-selling vehicle in America for over 40 years. Its identity is built on the idea of capability, utility, hard work. The ads show contractors loading lumber, farmers crossing muddy fields, people who need a truck to do a job. But here's the reality check. A contractor earning $65,000 a year in take-home salary, and that's solidly middle income in most parts of this country, is looking at a situation where a new F-150 at average transaction price would consume an absurd portion of their monthly budget. Not the Ram TRX, not the Raptor, the basic working-class truck they actually need for work. Robert runs a small landscaping business in Ohio, makes around $72,000 gross, which after taxes and business expenses puts him in the $55,000 range in real money he can work with. He came to me, or someone like Robert did, and showed me a truck deal he was excited about. $54,000 truck, 72-month loan, $850 a month. He had already done the payment math. He hadn't done the total cost math. Over 6 years, he was committing over $61,000 to a vehicle that would likely be worth $18,000 by the end. That's not a truck purchase. That's a slow financial leak dressed up as a capable vehicle. The Federal Reserve's Consumer Finance Survey has consistently found that one of the top sources of financial regret among American households is vehicle spending. Not just what they spent, but the duration and total cost of what they committed to. People forget that a vehicle depreciates. They remember the monthly number. Who actually can afford it? So let's be real. Who is actually buying these trucks comfortably? The picture, when you look at it honestly, is a lot narrower than the marketing would have you believe. Dual-income households earning a combined $130,000 or more have real options here. Someone earning over $100,000 individually who doesn't carry significant other debt can absorb a truck payment without restructuring their life. Business owners who can write part of the vehicle off as a legitimate business expense change the math meaningfully. A $1,000 monthly payment looks different when $400 of it is reducing your tax bill. And then there's the segment nobody talks about, the people who finance a $55,000 truck on a $70,000 income because they just really, really want it. They make it work by cutting other things, less eating out, fewer vacations, a savings rate that quietly drops from 8% to 2%. Nothing dramatic, nothing that feels like a crisis, just a slow compression of everything else in the budget to accommodate a vehicle payment. A LendingTree affordability study released just this past month found that nearly 4 in 10 Americans describe their car as a financial stretch. Not a disaster, not a mistake they regret yet, just a stretch. That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. And here's the psychology behind that number. When something stretches you just enough to feel uncomfortable, but not enough to make you stop, you tend to normalize it over time. The stretch becomes the baseline. The truck becomes part of your identity. And suddenly, you can't imagine a life where you didn't have it, even if that life would have let you save $600 more a month. The manufacturers know exactly what they're doing. Here's the thing I want you to understand about $50,000 trucks, because I think this reframes the whole conversation. Truck manufacturers, Ford, GM, Ram, did not accidentally end up in this price range. They engineered their way here. Not because trucks got dramatically more expensive to build, but because they figured out that American buyers will pay for features, and features have much higher margins than transportation. Take the Ford F-150 Lariat. It starts around $52,000. It has a 12-inch touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay, power-adjustable seats, and a multi-contour seat option with ventilation. It also has the same basic frame, the same V8 option, and the same hauling capacity as the F-150 that existed 10 years ago for $35,000. The truck part of the truck didn't cost $17,000 more to make. The Lariat badge, the interior, the bundled technology, that's where the margin lives. They also quietly manipulated the trim structure to make the base models feel unacceptably bare. You know how when you walk in looking at the $36,000 truck and it has manual windows and rubber flooring and you feel like you're buying a work vehicle from 1994? That's intentional. They want the base truck to feel like a penalty for not spending more, so you spend more. Now, let me give you something useful here, because this isn't meant to just be a discouraging trip through price data. The used truck market in 2026 is genuinely interesting. Used truck prices dipped from their pandemic highs, bottomed out around mid-2025, and have since stabilized. You can find a 2021 or 2022 F-150 or Silverado with 40,000 to 60,000 miles for somewhere in the $32,000 to $42,000 range, depending on trim and region. That's a meaningful difference. On a $36,000 used truck, a 72-month loan at 7% interest puts your payment closer to $550 a month. That's a completely different financial conversation, one that starts to make sense for households in the $75,000 to $85,000 income range. The depreciation has already happened. Someone else took that $20,000 hit in the first 3 years. You're buying the usable truck life that remains without absorbing the new vehicle price premium. Is it as satisfying as the new smell and the full warranty? No, honestly, no. But the question was never whether the new truck feels better. The question was whether you can actually afford it. The real conversation we should be having. There's a quiet financial trap in the American truck market right now, and it works because trucks aren't just transportation. They're identity, they're aspiration. They're the physical representation of a version of yourself that works hard, that can handle anything, that doesn't make small choices. That's not an insult, that's just honest marketing psychology. Ford didn't accidentally sell 750,000 F-Series trucks last year. They understood something deep about what Americans want to feel when they're driving. But feeling capable and being financially capable are very different things. And the market has subtly shifted in a way where the truck that used to be a reasonable purchase for a working person is now priced in a range that genuinely strains most American households. The Edmunds data from earlier this year put it clearly. Monthly payments and loan terms are stretching further than at any point in recent history. Stretching further means you're committing more of your financial future to a depreciating asset. It means your truck is alive and well in your driveway, while your retirement account, your emergency savings, or your ability to handle an unexpected medical bill quietly weakens. So, who can actually afford a $50,000 truck in 2026? Honestly, fewer people than are buying them. Households with combined incomes above $110,000, minimal debt, and genuine savings, yes, comfortably. Business owners using legitimate deductions, yes, with real math behind it. People stretching a $75,000 income to cover an $800 monthly payment while telling themselves it's fine. Technically buying one, yes. Comfortably affording it, that's a different answer. The number that stays with me is this. 1 in 5 people buying a new vehicle right now is paying over $1,000 a month, and the average American household income would suggest most of those people are pushing right up against the edge of what they can realistically absorb. None of this means trucks are bad or that wanting one makes you financially irresponsible. It means that the market has drifted upward fast enough that the old mental anchors don't apply anymore. The truck that used to cost $32,000 is now $52,000. The loan that used to be 48 months is now 84. The payment that used to be $400 is now $800. Every step felt small. The total distance traveled is enormous. And the best financial move isn't shame, it's math. Actual math with your real numbers, your real income, your real other obligations, not the number the dealership builds for you at the desk while you're already half in love with the truck. If the numbers work, genuinely work, then go enjoy the truck. If they don't, the used market is sitting there offering you most of the same capability for significantly less financial pressure. Your future self will notice the difference.